If anger has caused a problem in your relationship, you are not alone. As an anger management counselor, relationships are the number one reason that people come seek out my help to improve their anger, because it's causing a problem in your relationship, it's causing a problem in your marriage or with a significant other. So today I want to talk about 5 important things that you need to understand and that you need to work on in order to not let your anger or to let conflict be a destructive thing in your relationship. So stick around and we'll jump right in. Hey everyone, I'm Cody Mitts. I'm a licensed counselor here in the state of Colorado, and I specialize in anger management counseling. And today I am going to talk about one of the most common things that comes up in anger management, and that is the topic of relationships. It probably doesn't come as a surprise to you if you're watching this video that anger can be very destructive in a relationship. And like I said earlier, it's one of the most common problems that comes from anger, and definitely one of the most common topics when it comes to anger management. So let me dive in, and I'm going to share with you 5 ways that you can manage anger in a relationship and practice really healthy conflict with your partner or spouse. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the difference between regulating your anger and practicing conflict management. I would say that they're different skills and they're related to each other, but I think it's important to understand that they are different things. Regulating the emotion of anger in your life is the thing that you have to be good at first. If you can't do that, I would say conflict management is really going to kind of go out the door. The second that your partner or your spouse brings up a topic that gets you upset or gets you worked up, and your emotion just flies through the roof and starts bouncing around, you're not able to control your anger, conflict is going to be out the window. It's going to be impossible. It's going to be very difficult, at least, to be able to do conflict with that person because you can't regulate the emotion of anger in your life. And I would say the first thing you have to agree on with your partner is that you're not going to do conflict when one of you is upset. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't feel some minor level of annoyance or frustration with the other person, but if your anger is really high, if your emotions are out of control, you're not going to be able to do conflict management. So learning to separate how to regulate your emotions as one skill from conflict management as a separate skill. The second key to controlling anger in your relationship is learning that there's a difference between being assertive and being aggressive. And I say this because it's very easy to confuse the two. And the difference between being assertive and aggressive is that when you're assertive, you're setting healthy boundaries in your life. You're telling your partner, you're telling your spouse what you want, what you don't want, what you need, letting them know what you think, but doing that in a way that is not abusive and that's not aggressive. Aggressive behavior, on the other hand, can be anything from physical, so putting your hands on somebody, pushing, shoving, grabbing someone. Those are all aggressive behaviors, and they're forms of abuse. Aggressive behavior can also be non-physical, so yelling, raising your voice, swearing at someone, calling your partner a name. Those are all forms of abuse, verbal abuse, and again, they're aggressive behavior. They're not being assertive. So I think an easy way to kind of remember the difference is that being assertive, you're letting the other person know what it is that you want or you need, and aggressive behavior is hurting the other person or trying to coerce the other person into doing something that you want. The third key to controlling anger in your relationship and to managing conflict is paying attention to your nonverbal communication. There's research that has found that only 7% of what we communicate is actually verbally through our words. So that means 93% of what we communicate to our partner is nonverbal. So nonverbal communication can be anything. It can be your body posture. So if you're stiff and you're rigid and you don't move, that's completely different than if you are kind of relaxed and if your body moves around. It could be your facial expressions, something as minor as just having an intense stare, so their eyes, the way that you look at someone. It can be the tone of voice that you use. It could be how fast, how slow that you talk to someone. It could be how loud, if you're raising your voice, if you're talking softly or talking calmly. It's going to communicate something very different to your partner. So really paying attention to your nonverbal communication, because you may say the right words, but if your body language doesn't emphasize or doesn't align with what you're saying, your partner is going to interpret something completely different than what you're actually saying to them. The fourth part of good conflict management with your partner is knowing when to take a timeout. Knowing when to take a timeout really has to do with what level of anger you're experiencing. If your anger is getting to a point where it's going to be destructive, if you're getting aggressive in any way, if you're getting violent, if you're doing something that's unhealthy or unhelpful, then you need to take a time out. So you really need to know where that point is for you personally. If you do take time away from that person, that you're doing something that actually calms you down. So going for a walk, getting some fresh air, doing something to distract yourself, listening to some music, you could read a book, but doing something to take your mind off of the conflict is going to be important. Because if you take a time out and during that time all you do is you kind of stew on what you're upset about, or think about what you're going to say when you get back and how you're going to get back at that person, you're not really doing anything to help yourself. You're just keeping yourself agitated, you're keeping your anger high, and it's not going to really be an effective solution for you. And the last piece of that is that if you take the time out, it's your responsibility to make sure that you come back once you have calmed down and you actually resolve the conflict with the person. And this again is where it's easy to let a timeout become a way to kind of avoid something. So making sure that you come back at the end, that you resolve the conflict, and if your anger starts escalating again, you can always take another time out. So doing that as much as you need in order to be able to keep your anger from getting to a destructive or unhealthy level, but not using it as a way to avoid the conflict that you're dealing with. Step number 5 is really try and connect with your partner. I think that conflict resolution is really about trying to connect with that other person, connect with your partner, connect with your spouse, so that you can resolve some conflict, and that ultimately the relationship will be in a healthier, better place than it was when you began. Think of conflict not as a negative thing, but think of it as I'm trying to resolve a problem with this person so that we can connect, so that we can improve our relationship in a healthy and helpful way. Because if we think of anger and we think of conflict as these negative things, if we relate them as bad emotions or bad things in our lives, then we're going to tend to avoid them. We're not going to practice them. And I would say conflict and anger are going to be a part of any relationship that you're in. There's no relationship that doesn't have some level of conflict. There's no person in the world that's not going to trigger some level of anger in your life. So it's important to learn how to regulate this emotion and how to connect with a person through your anger and through your conflict is really, I think, what we're trying to accomplish. I hope that you found these tips helpful. If you enjoyed the video, hope that you might give it a thumbs up or a share. You can subscribe to the channel down below to get the latest videos as we share them here. And of course, if you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments below. I would love to answer your questions. I would love to share some videos on any specific problems or challenges that you're having with your anger. But thanks for taking the time to hear what I had to share, and I hope that you take good care of yourself.